She resisted the marriage, but the alien princess went silent when she saw the Lyra Solis stood at the edge of the landing platform, her boots clicking softly against the polished metal surface. Below her, the sprawling city of Xylar Prime shimmered under the alien twin suns. Towering crystalline buildings reflected golden and violet light, while floating transport platforms hummed quietly as they glided between the structures. The sight was breathtaking, and yet Lyra felt a twinge of unease in her chest. She had traveled across star systems, met diplomats, scientists, and explorers from many worlds, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. The Xylar Dominion, a civilization known for their strict codes of tradition and honor, had summoned her here, not as a diplomat but as a bride. The official message had been formal and cold. As per the treaty agreement between the United Earth Coalition and the Xylar Dominion, human ambassador Lyra Solis is requested to enter the union with Princess Althara for the consolidation of peace and trust between our peoples. Lyra had read the words several times, hoping to find some error, some loophole, but the meaning remained clear. She was to be married to an alien princess. The very idea made her stomach twist, not out of fear, but out of sheer disbelief. Humans were allowed to adapt, to choose, to explore. They were not meant to be pawns in some cosmic alliance. As she stepped off the landing platform, the air of Xylar Prime enveloped her. It was cleaner than Earth, almost unnaturally so, with a faint metallic scent that hinted at advanced purification systems. Lyra adjusted her sleeve and scanned the area. Guards in sleek, reflective armor moved silently around the plaza, their elongated forms and careful movements marking them as distinctly Xylar. They observed her closely, though their expressions, if they could be called that, were unreadable. Lyra had been trained to read body language and subtle cues, but the Xylars were something different entirely. Their faces were elegant and alien, with pale, smooth skin that seemed almost sculpted, large, luminous eyes, and a regal bearing that demanded attention. Even standing still, they projected authority. Lyra's escort approached, a senior Xylar diplomat named Veshkar, whose translucent robe shimmered under the suns. "Welcome, Lyra Solis," he said, his voice calm and even, yet carrying an unspoken weight of expectation. "Your arrival is timely. The princess awaits your audience. The council expects you to attend the initial formalities immediately." Lyra's heart sank. She had anticipated discussions, negotiations, perhaps even tour of the city to understand the alien culture. But formalities meant protocol, and protocol meant she had to face Althara in her role as bride. Every instinct in her screamed to resist, to find a way to delay or cancel the ceremony. She straightened her shoulders and nodded politely. "I understand," she said, forcing calm into her voice. As they walked through the corridors of the palace, Lyra could not help but notice the grandeur of Xylar architecture. Unlike Earth cities, which often relied on functional designs interwoven with artistic flourishes, Xylar structures seemed to defy gravity and geometry. Walls curved in impossible arcs, surfaces shimmered as if made from liquid metal, and intricate patterns of light ran along the floors, responding to footsteps. The palace itself was alive in subtle ways, an elegant fusion of technology and art that spoke of a culture with both discipline and imagination. It was awe-inspiring, and yet, Lyra reminded herself, beauty did not mean she had to surrender her freedom. They entered a large hall where the council gathered, a circle of Xylar leaders seated on floating platforms. Princess Althara was there, standing apart from the others. Lyra's first impression of her was striking. Althara moved with a grace that seemed almost unnatural, her posture perfect, her gaze steady and observing. She was beautiful in a way that was both alien and captivating, with pale violet skin that caught the sunlight streaming from above and hair like spun silver that cascaded down her shoulders. But what impressed Lyra most was not her beauty, but the quiet strength she radiated. Here was someone who commanded attention without demanding it, whose presence alone was enough to silence a room. The princess's eyes met Lyra's as she approached, and for a brief moment, Lyra felt the full weight of expectation. She was not merely a guest. She was a participant in an arrangement that could determine the future of both their peoples. Lyra straightened her back and met Althara's gaze with her own, refusing to show hesitation. "Princess Althara," she said, bowing slightly in respect without compromising her posture. "It is an honor to meet you." Althara inclined her head slightly, acknowledging the greeting, but said nothing. Silence followed, filled with the quiet hum of the palace's ambient energy. Lyra realized that Althara's silence was not rudeness. It was observation, a careful assessment. The princess's eyes swept over her, taking in every detail, and for the first time, Lyra felt as though she was being seen not as a human, not as a representative of Earth, but as an individual. It was both unnerving and empowering. Veshkar cleared his throat, breaking the tension. The council requests that discussions regarding the union proceed immediately. Lyra nodded and followed the diplomat to a smaller chamber. As they walked, she could hear murmurs among the council members, a mixture of curiosity and intrigue. Humans were rare in the Xylar Dominion, and one who resisted tradition was even rarer. Lyra's presence alone was a statement, and she realized that her actions in the coming hours would be scrutinized closely. Once inside the chamber, Lyra found herself facing a holographic display of Xylar history, culture, and technological achievements. Veshkar explained each aspect, emphasizing the importance of unity, honor, and the preservation of tradition. Lyra listened carefully, acknowledging the achievements without yielding to the expectations placed upon her. She understood the value of diplomacy and the weight of her actions, but she also knew that her independence was non-negotiable. Finally, Althara entered the room. The princess's presence was commanding, and yet there was a subtle warmth in her expression, a curiosity that Lyra had not expected. Althara observed the human woman carefully, tilting her head slightly as if studying a fascinating puzzle. Lyra felt a spark of determination. She would not be intimidated by tradition or expectation. She would show that humanity had its own strengths, its own ingenuity, and its own way of thinking. The conversation began formally, with discussions about the political implications of the union. Lyra asked questions, challenged assumptions, and proposed alternatives that emphasized mutual respect rather than obligation. Althara listened intently, her eyes reflecting genuine interest. For the first time, Lyra sensed a connection, not of romance or obligation, but of understanding. Both were intelligent, independent, and committed to their responsibilities. The potential for conflict was present, but so was the potential for mutual respect. As the discussion progressed, Lyra noticed a small artifact on a side table, a delicate sculpture, seemingly of human design, though made with alien materials. Her heart skipped a beat. She recognized the style, the ingenuity, and the creativity. "That looks familiar," she said, moving closer to examine it. Althara's eyes followed her, and for the first time the princess went completely silent. Lyra felt the weight of that silence, realizing that her presence, her knowledge, and her very humanity had made an impression. The artifact was a reminder that humans, often underestimated, possessed ingenuity and creativity that even the most advanced civilizations could admire. Lyra turned back to Althara, meeting the princess's gaze with quiet confidence. "This reminds me of something we create on Earth," she said. "It shows that even across galaxies, creativity can bridge worlds." Althara's silence lingered, but her eyes softened slightly, and Lyra understood that she had planted a seed of respect. It was not about submission or power. It was about recognition of humanity's potential. As the sun began to set over Xylar Prime, casting long shadows across the crystalline structures, Lyra took a deep breath. She had arrived as a reluctant participant in a political arrangement, but she would navigate this world with her own mind and courage. She would resist where necessary, collaborate where possible, and show that humans could hold their own in any arena, no matter how alien. And in that silent exchange with the princess, she sensed that the future, while uncertain, held possibilities she had never imagined. Lyra Solis walked back to her quarters that evening with a renewed sense of purpose. She had faced the grandeur of Xylar tradition, met a princess who embodied strength and curiosity, and resisted the pressures of expectation without compromise. For the first time, she felt a spark of hope that her presence here might not just be about a union, but about mutual understanding, respect, and perhaps even the beginning of a story that neither human nor Xylar would forget. The journey ahead was long, full of challenges and brimming with unknowns, but Lyra was ready. Humanity had a way of thriving where others doubted, and she intended to prove it. Lyra woke early, her mind still buzzing from the events of the previous day. The Xylar Palace was quiet at this hour, the soft hum of energy systems and distant movement of guards the only sounds breaking the stillness. She stood by the tall window of her quarters, gazing at the sprawling city below, bathed in the light of the twin suns. The golden and violet rays cast intricate shadows over the crystalline towers, making them sparkle like jewels. Despite the beauty, Lyra felt a deep tension inside her. She was here against her will in many ways, but she was determined not to let fear or uncertainty control her. She had to find a way to navigate this alien world while keeping her independence intact. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. A young Xyler aide entered, carrying a tray with a simple breakfast. "Good morning, Lyra Solis," he said politely. His large, luminous eyes blinked once before he lowered his gaze, as if respecting her space. "Princess Althara requests your presence for a walk in the gardens. She wishes to speak with you privately." Lyra paused. A walk in the gardens. It was unusual for a princess to request time alone with someone, especially a human she was expected to marry under formal treaty rules. Curiosity mixed with caution. Lyra nodded. "Thank you. I will join her shortly." The gardens of the Xyler Palace were unlike anything Lyra had ever seen. Bioluminescent plants glowed softly along winding pathways. Water flowed in graceful arcs, defying gravity in some places, forming suspended streams that sparkled in the sunlight. Strange but beautiful creatures, resembling a mixture of birds and insects, flitted between the trees, their wings shimmering with metallic hues. The entire space felt alive, as if the garden itself were aware of the visitors. Princess Althara was already there, standing on a small bridge over a gently floating pool. She wore a simple ceremonial robe, far less formal than the attire of the council, allowing her elegance and natural poise to shine. Her eyes, violet and luminous, studied Lyra as she approached. For a moment there was silence, broken only by the soft sound of water and the gentle hum of energy flowing through the garden. Lyra took a deep breath. "Princess Althara," she said softly. "You wish to speak with me?" Althara inclined her head slightly. "I did," she said, her voice calm but filled with a quiet intensity. "I want to understand you, Lyra Solis, not as a diplomat, not as a human assigned to a duty, but as a person." Lyra blinked. She had expected formalities, instructions, or even subtle warnings. This was different. The princess was not commanding her to comply or instructing her on protocol. She was curious, and that curiosity intrigued Lyra. "Very well," Lyra said, keeping her tone neutral. "Ask what you wish, I will answer honestly." Althara walked slowly along the bridge, her movements precise and deliberate. "You resist the union," she began. "That is clear. You do not wish to marry for the sake of political duty. Why?" Lyra considered her words carefully. "Because marriage is not just a formality for humans," she said. "It is a commitment, a choice. I cannot accept being part of a treaty in a way that demands I surrender my freedom, my voice, and my independence. Humans value choice, creativity, and courage. I will not give those up simply because others expect it." The princess was silent for a moment, her gaze drifting to the flowing waters below. Then she turned back, eyes sharp but thoughtful. "I see," she said quietly. "Your courage is unusual. Many humans follow orders because they must. You do not. That is admirable." Lyra felt a small spark of surprise. Admiration from a Xyler royal was rare. "Thank you," she said, choosing her words carefully. "I do not wish to disrespect your culture or people. I only wish to be respected in return." Althara studied her, and for the first time, Lyra noticed a subtle shift in the princess's demeanor. There was curiosity, yes, but also something else, an unspoken respect. "I am learning," Althara said softly. "Humans are not as primitive as our history suggested. You think differently. You solve problems differently. Perhaps there is value in that." Lyra nodded, sensing an opportunity. "We approach challenges with flexibility and creativity. We do not always rely on tradition or protocol, though we respect it when it makes sense. That can sometimes surprise others, but it allows humans to adapt and thrive." The princess walked closer, stopping a few paces from Lyra. Her eyes fell on a small, human-designed device Lyra carried, a portable energy stabilizer she used for demonstrations and engineering tests. Althara reached out, her long fingers brushing lightly over the device, examining it with fascination. "This is human?" she asked, almost in disbelief. Lyra smiled faintly. "Yes, it is a small tool, but it demonstrates how humans combine ingenuity with practicality. Simple ideas can create strong results." Althara's silence lasted longer this time. She turned the device in her hands, her eyes reflecting curiosity, wonder, and something like astonishment. She had grown up in a culture that prized tradition above innovation, following rules handed down over centuries. To see a human artifact and witness the intellect and adaptability behind it was a revelation. She felt a quiet admiration that she had not expected. Lyra, unaware of the full effect, continued speaking. On Earth, we create solutions with the resources we have, rather than waiting for perfect conditions. That teaches creativity, resilience, and quick thinking. It is why humans have survived and thrived despite countless challenges. Althara's eyes softened, and she finally spoke. "You are unlike any human I have known or studied. You do not fit the expectations we had." Her gaze met Lyra's directly. "It is surprising." Lyra kept her posture steady, refusing to appear intimidated. "Humans are often underestimated, but we adapt, we learn, and we find ways to succeed." The princess was quiet again, her gaze studying Lyra's face. It was not judgment, but understanding forming in real time. Althara had never seen someone approach life this way, with courage, independence, and intelligence all at once. The realization was startling, and it left her momentarily speechless. After a long pause, Althara finally spoke again. "Perhaps there is more to this union than I first believed, not as a duty but as an opportunity to learn from you, Lyra Solis." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. This was unexpected. The princess was not dismissing her resistance. She was acknowledging her perspective. "I appreciate that," Lyra said carefully. "I want understanding, not control. I hope we can find a way to respect each other without sacrificing our principles." Althara nodded slowly. "We shall see," she said. "There is much I wish to know about humanity. And perhaps you may learn about Xylar ways that are not merely traditions, but paths to balance and wisdom." They walked along the floating paths of the garden in silence for a while, observing the strange creatures and plants. Lyra explained some of her Earth knowledge, comparing human methods of problem-solving to what she could infer about Xylar technology. Althara listened, occasionally asking questions, clearly intrigued by Lyra's insights. At one point, they reached a grove where a small waterfall floated in midair, defying gravity with a delicate shimmer of light. Lyra reached out to touch the water, fascinated by the way it glowed with energy. Althara stood beside her, silent, and watched. Lyra realized that the princess's silence was not coldness. It was observation, reflection, and learning. Althara was absorbing everything, trying to understand a perspective very different from her own. Lyra spoke softly. "You see, Princess, humans value ideas and courage over strict adherence to rules. We believe in taking action and thinking critically. That is why we survive and thrive." Althara nodded slowly. "I can see it," she said quietly. "I have been taught to follow rules without question, yet watching you I understand there is power in choice and innovation. Perhaps I underestimated your people." Lyra smiled faintly, feeling a spark of hope. The princess's perception was shifting. "It is not weakness to challenge expectations," she said. "It is how progress happens." They continued their walk until the suns dipped lower, casting the garden in warm, ethereal light. The two paused at the edge of a reflective pool where the colors of the sky mirrored in the water. Althara finally broke the silence. "You resist the marriage," she said. "Yet I feel there is something important in your resistance. You show strength I have rarely seen." Lyra nodded. "Strength comes from standing by what you believe even when others pressure you. It is not rebellion, it is integrity." Althara's gaze softened, and she said something that surprised Lyra. "Perhaps humans have more to teach Xylar than I realized." "Your courage, your perspective, it is inspiring." Lyra felt a mixture of relief and astonishment. She had expected resistance, tension, and misunderstanding. Instead, she found respect, curiosity, and a chance to influence a culture in a subtle but meaningful way. "I hope we can continue to learn from each other," she said. Althara nodded. "We shall." As the first stars began to appear in the sky of Xylar Prime, Lyra realized that her journey had shifted. What began as a challenge, an obligation imposed by treaty and tradition, had become an opportunity. An opportunity to show that humanity's strength lay not in dominance, but in courage, creativity, and integrity. And in that moment, the princess's silent admiration was a recognition of the very same values. Lyra knew that this was only the beginning. The palace, the council, and the world beyond awaited her decisions. She would face them all with the same determination she had shown here. And somewhere, deep within the princess's silence, Lyra felt the first seeds of understanding and respect had been planted. As they walked back toward the palace, side by side, the human and the alien moved not as bride and ruler, not yet as friends, but as equals beginning to understand one another. Each step forward was a step toward a new future, one where humans were not underestimated, where choice and courage mattered, and where even the grandest traditions could be met with insight and respect. Lyra Solis was ready for whatever came next. Lyra awoke to another bright day on Xylar Prime, the twin suns spilling golden and violet light across her quarters. The palace was quiet, yet she could sense the undercurrent of expectation. Yesterday had been extraordinary. The princess had observed her with curiosity, and for the first time Lyra had felt that her presence, her independence, her courage, and her human ingenuity was truly being noticed. She knew that Althara's silence had been a reflection not of judgment, but of awe. That alone was a small victory. Yet Lyra also understood that admiration could quickly turn into expectation. She would need to continue proving herself, not through submission, but through action and intelligence. Breakfast arrived, and she ate quickly while reviewing her notes about Xylar technology. There was much to learn, but also much to teach. Humans had a reputation for ingenuity, and Lyra intended to demonstrate that, subtly yet effectively. She finished and made her way to the gardens, where she had been told the princess wished to meet again. Today, however, there was a difference. Althara was not merely curious. There was a sense of urgency in her movements. A tension that suggested matters of importance had arisen. When Lyra entered the gardens, she found Althara standing near a cluster of alien plants whose bioluminescent leaves shimmered with energy. The princess turned, her violet eyes reflecting light and thoughtfulness. "Lyra Solis," she said, her voice calm but firm, "I have a request. There is a project within the palace, a technological problem that has challenged even our most skilled engineers. I wish for your assistance." Lyra's eyes widened slightly. "Your engineers cannot solve it?" she asked, trying to mask both surprise and curiosity. Althara's gaze was steady. "They are skilled, but their methods are bound by tradition. They cannot think beyond the frameworks they know. I have observed your approach, your creativity. I believe you may offer insights we cannot." Lyra paused, realizing this was unprecedented. The princess, usually bound by protocol and tradition, was asking for collaboration, acknowledging the unique value of human problem-solving. "I would be glad to help," she said finally. "What is the problem?" Althara led her deeper into the palace complex, through corridors that shimmered with soft energy light and walls etched with flowing patterns of Xylar script. They arrived at a chamber filled with intricate machinery, the hum of energy and faint vibrations in the air creating a sense of controlled chaos. The project involved stabilizing a planetary energy grid that powered the palace and the surrounding city. Recent fluctuations threatened the delicate balance, and a failure could result in catastrophic damage to the palace's structure and the lives of those inside. Lyra observed the setup carefully, noting the intricate network of conduits, energy nodes, and holographic interfaces. "The Xylar system is incredibly advanced," she said thoughtfully, "but it seems the structure relies heavily on strict parameters. Humans often find solutions by adjusting variables in unexpected ways. Perhaps there is room for flexibility here." Althara watched her closely. "Explain your method," she said. Lyra smiled faintly. "We often begin by identifying the underlying principle. What is the system trying to achieve at its core? Then we test small adjustments, observing responses rather than following rigid instructions. This allows us to adapt quickly and discover solutions others may not consider." Althara nodded slowly, clearly impressed. She gestured toward the machinery. "Then show me how it is done." For hours, Lyra worked alongside the princess and a team of Xylar engineers. At first, there was tension. The engineers were skilled, but many were skeptical of human methods. They relied on precision, repetition, and centuries of tradition, while Lyra approached problems with experimentation, intuition, and calculated risk. Slowly, however, the results became clear. Small adjustments and creative solutions began to stabilize the system. The energy flows evened, the hum of the machinery became steady, and the threat of failure diminished. Althara observed every move, absorbing the process and asking questions about human reasoning. "You do not rely on repetition alone," she noted. You adapt in real time, anticipate outcomes, and consider possibilities beyond what is known. This is remarkable. Lyra glanced at her. It is what humans do. We cannot always rely on tradition to survive. We must innovate, improvise, and act boldly. As the day progressed, the collaboration deepened. Lyra and Althara discussed not only technical solutions, but also the philosophy behind problem-solving. The princess began to understand that humans valued creativity as much as discipline, and that strength came not only from rules but from intellect and courage. In turn, Lyra gained insight into Xylar culture, realizing that their rigid systems were born from centuries of survival, stability, and preservation. The combination of human adaptability and Xylar precision was proving to be remarkably effective. By the afternoon, the planetary energy grid was stabilized. The chamber, once tense with potential disaster, now hummed with quiet efficiency. Engineers and aides alike regarded Lyra with newfound respect. Even Althara's usual regal composure could not hide her approval. "You have done well," the princess said quietly, her violet eyes meeting Lyra's. "Not only have you solved the problem, but you have shown me the value of a perspective I had not fully considered. Humans are exceptional." Lyra felt a small surge of pride. This was more than recognition. It was validation of humanity's unique strength. "Thank you, Princess Althara," she replied. "I did not come to Xylar to prove superiority. I only wished to contribute what I could, honestly and effectively." Althara smiled faintly, a gesture rare for her formal demeanor. Contribution, courage, and integrity. These are qualities we often overlook in the pursuit of tradition. You remind me that strength comes in many forms. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the palace, Lyra and Althara walked through the gardens once more. The bioluminescent plants glowed softly in the dimming light, and the floating streams reflected the colors of the sky. The princess spoke again, quietly, almost hesitantly. "I have seen much today. Your presence challenges not only my expectations, but the assumptions of my people. It is unsettling, yet enlightening." Lyra nodded. "Change is often uncomfortable, but it is necessary for growth. Humans understand that well. We adapt and move forward even when it is difficult." Althara stopped near a reflective pool, watching her own image mingle with Lyra's reflection. "Perhaps there is more to this union than duty," she said softly. "Not as an obligation, but as a chance to understand, to learn, and to respect differences." Lyra felt a spark of hope. "That is all I ask," she said. "Mutual understanding, respect, and the chance to show what humanity can offer without compromising who I am." The princess studied her in silence for a long moment, then spoke again. "You have opened my eyes. I see potential where I had seen only expectation. That is rare." They continued walking until the stars appeared in the Xylar sky, faintly shimmering above the twin suns' fading light. Althara finally said, "There is a project I wish to share with you further, one that may benefit from your skills, your ingenuity, and your courage." Lyra's curiosity was piqued. "What is it?" she asked, her tone calm but eager. Althara hesitated, then explained in careful detail. A nearby satellite station, responsible for monitoring the planetary environment and maintaining stability in the outer districts, was experiencing anomalies. Data transmissions were failing intermittently, and Xylar engineers could not identify the cause. It was a problem of observation, adaptation, and quick decision-making, exactly the type of challenge humans excelled at. Lyra listened intently, absorbing the technical details. "This is exactly the kind of problem where a flexible approach can help," she said. "I can assist in analyzing the system, identifying weak points, and proposing solutions that might not follow traditional methods." Althara nodded. "That is what I hoped you would say. Your insight is valuable, and I trust your judgment." The two of them spent the evening preparing for the mission to the satellite station. They worked side by side, discussing strategies, testing equipment, and creating contingency plans. The partnership that had begun in cautious observation now blossomed into collaboration. Each respected the other's skills, and both learned from the exchange. The human ingenuity Lyra brought complemented Althara's disciplined approach, resulting in solutions neither could have achieved alone. As night fully settled over Xylar Prime, Lyra reflected on the day. She had arrived as a reluctant participant in a political arrangement, expected to follow orders and submit to tradition. Yet now, through intelligence, courage, and cooperation, she had not only solved a critical problem but had earned the respect of a princess and a team of engineers. She realized that humans could change perceptions, not through force or dominance, but through action, integrity, and the demonstration of unique strengths. Althara stood beside her, silent for a moment, gazing at the stars. Then she said quietly, "Lyra Solis, I did not expect to learn so much from a human. Yet today I have seen the value of courage, creativity, and flexibility. You have taught me that strength comes not from tradition alone, but from the mind and heart." Lyra felt a rare smile forming. "Then perhaps we are both learning from each other," she said. The princess nodded, her violet eyes reflecting both thought and quiet admiration. In that moment, Lyra understood that their relationship had changed. It was no longer defined solely by political expectation or ceremonial duty. Instead, it was becoming something deeper, a partnership founded on respect, intelligence, and shared purpose. And in that realization, Lyra felt the spark of something extraordinary. Humanity had arrived on Xylar Prime not as a subordinate species, not as a pawn in political games, but as equals capable of inspiring, teaching, and shaping the future. As they walked back toward the palace, the twin suns had disappeared below the horizon, leaving the sky awash in violet and silver light. Lyra felt a sense of accomplishment, but also anticipation. Tomorrow, they would journey to the satellite station, facing new challenges together. And tomorrow, she would continue to demonstrate what humans could achieve when courage, ingenuity, and integrity were combined. The morning on Xylar Prime was crisp, with a pale violet sun casting gentle light across the crystalline city. Lyra Solis rose early, her mind alert and focused. Today would be different from any day she had experienced on this planet. The satellite station awaited, a vital outpost that monitored environmental stability across the outer districts. Its malfunction threatened not only the smooth operation of Xylar Prime, but potentially the safety of the surrounding regions. Lyra quickly reviewed her notes while having breakfast. Her mind ran through the problems she had learned about: faulty data transmissions, irregular energy patterns, and signals that defied conventional analysis. She knew that this mission would test her ingenuity and problem-solving skills more than anything she had faced before. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Princess Althara entered, wearing a practical outfit suited for fieldwork rather than her usual ceremonial attire. There was a seriousness in her gaze, but also a quiet determination. "Lyra Solis," she said, her voice steady, "the engineers have prepared a transport for us. The satellite station awaits. I trust you are ready." Lyra nodded, feeling a mix of anticipation and resolve. "I am," she replied. "Let's solve this together." The transport vehicle that awaited them was unlike anything on Earth. Sleek, aerodynamic, and equipped with adaptive propulsion systems, it hovered smoothly above the ground, guided by magnetic fields. As they boarded, Lyra marveled at the technology, but she also noted its practicality. It combined elegance with function, something the Xylars excelled at, though humans often approached problems differently. The journey to the satellite station took several hours. During this time, Lyra and Althara reviewed the technical data together. Lyra explained how humans approached system failures, by observing patterns, testing hypotheses, and adjusting variables methodically. Althara listened attentively, asking precise questions that reflected her disciplined thinking. Together, they compared human problem-solving methods with Xylar protocols, finding a complementary approach that neither had used before. Upon arrival at the satellite station, the magnitude of the task became clear. The station floated above the outer districts, its sleek frame anchored by energy tethers that connected to relay satellites and planetary monitoring arrays. Small bursts of static and irregular light patterns indicated instability, and the Xylar engineers present looked tense, aware that time was critical. Lyra immediately took charge of observation. "We need to map the anomalies first," she said. "Let's identify the source, not just the symptoms. If we fix only the effects, the system will fail again." The engineers nodded, some skeptically, others intrigued by the humans' confident approach. Althara stood beside Lyra, observing and learning, occasionally offering suggestions based on her understanding of Xylar technology. It was a rare partnership, and even the most senior engineers could not hide their amazement. Hours passed as Lyra and the team worked. She moved methodically, testing subsystems, adjusting energy flows, and proposing solutions that combined human flexibility with Xylar precision. Althara assisted, translating Lyra's methods into the technical language of her people, bridging the gap between human intuition and Xylar engineering. At one point, a sudden surge of energy caused part of the satellite's relay to spark dangerously. Althara froze for a moment, her instincts telling her to follow protocol and shut everything down. Lyra acted quickly, rerouting power and stabilizing the surge with a clever adjustment that relied on both speed and intuition. Althara watched silently, astonished by the human's quick thinking. "You take risks," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "Yet your method works." Lyra smiled faintly. "Calculated risk," she replied. "We adapt when needed. Waiting for perfect conditions often results in failure." By midday, they had located the source of the malfunction, a misaligned energy node that disrupted the relay network intermittently. Lyra devised a method to recalibrate the node without shutting down the entire system, a solution that required both her ingenuity and Althara's technical expertise. As they worked together to implement the fix, tension filled the air. The engineers watched in awe as Lyra and Althara coordinated flawlessly. Lyra's human adaptability allowed her to anticipate changes in the system, while Althara's disciplined understanding of Xylar technology ensured precision and safety. The satellite station, once unstable and unreliable, began to stabilize. Energy flows balanced, signals returned to normal, and data transmission resumed across the outer districts. When the final adjustments were made, Althara stepped back, her eyes reflecting quiet admiration. "You have done something remarkable," she said. "Not only have you stabilized the system, but you have shown me the value of human thinking and action. I have observed engineers here for decades, yet today your approach surpassed all expectations." Lyra felt a surge of pride but also humility. "I only did what humans do best," she said. "Observe, adapt, and act. The Xylar system is advanced, but it benefits from flexibility. Humans learn quickly in unpredictable conditions." Althara nodded slowly. "Flexibility, adaptation. Courage, these are qualities I now understand more deeply. You remind me that intelligence is not only knowledge, but the ability to apply it creatively." The mission was not yet over. As they prepared to return to the palace, reports came in from nearby districts. Minor anomalies in energy grids persisted. Lyra studied the data and suggested small, incremental adjustments that could prevent further disruptions. Althara agreed, and together they coordinated remote interventions. Within hours, the satellite network was fully stabilized, the outer districts secured, and the engineers were able to breathe again. One of the senior engineers approached Lyra cautiously. "Human ingenuity," he said, his voice tinged with respect. "I had not expected it to be so effective. Your methods are different, yet they produce results." Lyra smiled. "Different does not mean inferior. Humans have survived and thrived by adapting to change and finding solutions others might overlook." Althara's gaze met Lyra's, and for a long moment, they simply acknowledged each other's strengths. No words were needed. Mutual respect had formed, stronger than any political agreement or ceremonial obligation. As the suns began to set over Xylar Prime, Lyra and Althara returned to the palace. The streets of the city sparkled as lights activated across the crystalline towers, reflecting colors in every direction. The people of Xylar Prime moved gracefully along floating walkways, unaware of the quiet revolution in perception that had occurred. Back in the gardens, Lyra paused to catch her breath. "Today was intense," she said, allowing herself a small laugh. "But I think we've made a difference." Althara's expression softened. "A great difference," she said. "I have seen what humans can accomplish when courage and intellect are combined. You have not only solved technical problems, but have demonstrated the value of perspective, initiative, and adaptability. These are qualities I will not forget." Lyra looked at her, realizing that the princess's admiration was genuine, not ceremonial. "I am glad you see that," she said. "It is not about proving superiority. It is about showing what humans can contribute when given the opportunity." Althara nodded, her violet eyes thoughtful. "Opportunity, choice, courage, qualities humans possess in abundance. I have underestimated your people, but now I see. Perhaps our world will benefit from understanding these strengths." The sun dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky bathed in violet and silver light. Lyra reflected on the day's events. She had arrived on Xylar Prime as a reluctant participant in a political arrangement, expected to submit to tradition. Yet she had not only preserved her independence, she had shown that human ingenuity, courage, and adaptability were forces to be respected. Althara stood beside her, silent for a moment, watching the glowing streams and bioluminescent plants. "You have changed my perspective," she said quietly. "Not as a leader or diplomat, but as a human being. Today I learned that strength comes from the mind, heart, and spirit, not just from rules and tradition." Lyra felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. This mission, which could have been merely a demonstration of loyalty and duty, had become a testament to humanity's potential. She had faced the challenge without fear, relied on her skills, and gained the respect of one of the most influential beings on Xylar Prime. The night was calm, and the palace gardens glowed softly in the light of distant stars. Lyra realized that her journey was far from over. There would be more challenges, more political expectations, and more opportunities to demonstrate what humans could achieve. But for the first time, she felt that she was not merely surviving in an alien world. She was making a difference, shaping perceptions and opening doors for future collaboration. Althara finally spoke again, her tone quiet but firm. "Tomorrow, we will continue to explore ways humans and Xylar can work together. There is much to learn, and I wish for you to be part of that process. You have proven yourself capable, insightful, and courageous. These qualities are rare, and I recognize them in you." Lyra smiled, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. "I will continue to contribute," she said, "not for obligation, but because it is meaningful. Humans thrive when we are challenged and when we can make a difference." The princess nodded. "Then we are aligned. We will face the future together, as partners, not as teacher and student, not as ruler and subordinate, but as equals. Your presence has already begun to change my world." Lyra watched as Althara turned toward the palace, her posture elegant and strong. The human and the alien walked side by side through the gardens, not as bride and princess, not as strangers bound by duty, but as equals who had proven themselves capable of great things. And in that moment, Lyra realized something profound. Humanity had arrived on Xylar Prime not as a subordinate or an obligation to political treaties, but as a force of intelligence, courage, and ingenuity. The respect she had earned was not given lightly. It had been earned through action, perseverance, and the demonstration of uniquely human qualities. As the night deepened, Lyra felt ready for whatever challenges awaited. The satellite mission had been only the beginning. There were still mysteries to solve, problems to address, and perceptions to change. But one truth was clear. Humans, with their creativity, courage, and adaptability, were forces to be reckoned with, even on a planet as extraordinary as Xylar Prime. Lyra Solis had proven it today. The morning light on Xylar Prime fell softly across the palace gardens. Lyra Solis walked among the glowing plants, her mind still alive with thoughts from the previous days. The satellite mission had been a success, and the results had far-reaching implications. Not only had the planetary energy grid been stabilized, but the outer districts were now secure. Lyra had demonstrated human ingenuity and courage in ways that had impressed even the most traditional Xylar engineers. Yet the greatest challenge remained, the matter of the arranged union with Princess Althara. Lyra knew that the Xylar Council expected her cooperation in the ceremony. Protocol demanded it, tradition demanded it, and yet she had made it clear that her choice was hers alone. Today, she would meet with Althara to discuss the next steps. She approached the palace hall where the princess awaited, feeling a mixture of anticipation and calm determination. Althara stood at the center of the chamber, her posture regal yet relaxed, a hint of warmth in her violet eyes. She did not wear ceremonial robes, but instead practical attire suitable for discussion and collaboration. The princess's presence was commanding, but it carried a quiet understanding, a reflection of the respect that had grown between them over the past days. "Lyra Solis," Althara said, her voice even but thoughtful, "I have observed your actions and your courage. You have shown that humans possess qualities we often overlook: creativity, adaptability, and integrity. You have challenged our assumptions, and in doing so, you have earned my respect." Lyra inclined her head slightly. "Thank you, Princess. I have only acted according to my principles and my understanding." I believe humans can contribute meaningfully when given the chance, without having to surrender independence or voice. Althara nodded, taking a slow breath. The Council expects an answer regarding the Union. They assume compliance, but I will not force it. I wish for you to choose freely based on understanding and respect, not obligation. Your decision matters to me and to the future of our peoples. Lyra felt a wave of relief. The princess's words were unexpected, yet empowering. I appreciate that, she said. I have considered the implications carefully. I cannot enter a union purely out of duty or expectation. My choices must reflect my principles, and my voice must remain my own. Althara's eyes softened. Then let us discuss what is possible. We are not bound solely by tradition. We may create a solution that respects both our cultures and our independence. They spent hours in discussion, exploring options and possibilities. Lyra suggested a formal partnership that would honor the treaty without requiring marriage, allowing her to maintain her independence while strengthening ties between Earth and the Xylar Dominion. Althara proposed a role for Lyra that recognized her contributions and leadership skills. The position of human ambassador to the Xylar Dominion, a title that would grant Lyra authority, respect, and autonomy while fostering collaboration. The council convened later that day, and Lyra and Althara presented their proposal. The chamber was filled with Xylar nobles and officials, their expressions unreadable. Many expected defiance, perhaps even failure, but Lyra remained calm, confident in her knowledge and reasoning. She spoke clearly, explaining the value of human adaptability, problem-solving, and ingenuity, emphasizing the benefits of collaboration over blind obedience. Althara supported her, detailing how Lyra's contributions had stabilized the satellite network and secured the outer districts. The presentation was not merely about politics. It was a demonstration of results, evidence of what humans could achieve when treated as equals. The council listened in silence, then murmurs spread through the chamber. Some questioned the break from tradition, but others saw the wisdom in recognizing human strengths. After deliberation, the council voted unanimously to approve the proposal. Lyra would not be forced into marriage, and her role as human ambassador was officially recognized. A wave of relief washed over Lyra, but she remained composed, understanding that this victory was not just personal. It was a triumph for humanity. Humans had been underestimated, and now their value and capabilities were acknowledged on a planetary scale. Althara turned to Lyra, her expression soft yet proud. You have changed perceptions, not through force, but through courage, intelligence, and integrity. Today, you have proven that humans can lead, inspire, and contribute meaningfully to our world. Lyra smiled faintly. I only did what humans do best. We observe, we adapt, we act. That is how we thrive and how we earn respect. The princess nodded. And respect has been earned, not demanded. That is a lesson I will carry forward. In the days that followed, Lyra settled into her new role. She worked closely with Althara and the Xylar engineers, improving systems, suggesting innovations, and fostering collaboration. Her presence was a constant reminder that humans, when given the opportunity, could achieve extraordinary results. Althara observed her daily, learning not only technical methods but the philosophy behind human ingenuity, the courage to act, the willingness to adapt, and the value of independent thought. The bond between Lyra and Althara grew, not as a romantic or ceremonial connection, but as a partnership based on mutual respect and understanding. They became a symbol of what could be achieved when different worlds and perspectives united. Lyra also spent time with the citizens of Xylar Prime, demonstrating Earth technologies and teaching principles of human problem-solving. The people were fascinated by her ingenuity, her courage, and her approach to challenges. Even the most skeptical engineers and nobles began to see the value in flexibility, innovation, and creative thinking. One evening, Lyra and Althara walked through the gardens, the soft glow of bioluminescent plants reflecting off the water. You have changed much in a short time, Althara said quietly. Your presence has reminded us that strength is not measured by obedience or tradition alone, but by courage, intellect, and integrity. Lyra nodded. It is what humans do. We adapt, we persevere, and we contribute. I hope my actions here will continue to encourage understanding and cooperation between our peoples. Althara smiled faintly. They will. You have set an example that will be remembered, and you have done it without sacrificing yourself, without surrendering your principles. That is extraordinary. Lyra felt a sense of deep satisfaction. Her journey had begun with uncertainty and resistance, yet it had led to recognition, respect, and meaningful influence. Humans were not merely guests or obligations in the galaxy. They were capable, intelligent, and courageous partners. The days passed with continued collaboration. Lyra and Althara oversaw improvements to infrastructure, shared knowledge between human and Xylar engineers, and ensured that future challenges could be met with both flexibility and precision. Lyra's influence grew, but she remained humble, focused on results rather than recognition. Althara observed closely, learning not just from Lyra's intellect, but from her resilience and integrity. One afternoon, Althara approached Lyra with a proposal. "There is a new initiative," she said, "a planetary research project that requires leadership, vision, and the ability to inspire collaboration across worlds. I wish for you to lead it." Lyra considered the offer. It would be a significant responsibility, requiring long hours and innovative solutions, but it aligned with her principles and desire to contribute meaningfully. "I accept," she said, "but only if we ensure that humans and Xylar work as equals, respecting each other's perspectives and strengths." Althara nodded. "That is understood. Equality, respect, and collaboration will guide this project." The two began planning immediately, coordinating teams, assigning responsibilities, and designing systems that combined human ingenuity with Xylar precision. Lyra's approach encouraged creative solutions, while Althara ensured discipline and order. The collaboration was remarkable, producing results that exceeded expectations. Word of their partnership spread across Xylar Prime and the surrounding districts. Citizens, engineers, and officials recognized that this union of ideas and effort had improved not only technology, but also understanding between species. Humans were no longer underestimated. They were respected, admired, and trusted. In the evenings, Lyra often walked through the gardens with Althara. They discussed not only technology and strategy, but philosophy, culture, and the values that guided their actions. Althara shared her insights about Xylar history and tradition, while Lyra explained human approaches to problem-solving, ethics, and leadership. Through these conversations, they developed a bond rooted in mutual respect, trust, and admiration. One night, as the twin suns set and the sky filled with stars, Althara turned to Lyra. "You have changed my world," she said softly. "Not through force or obligation, but through courage, intelligence, and integrity. I will never forget what you have taught me." Lyra smiled. "And I have learned much from you. Your discipline, wisdom, and dedication are remarkable. Together, I believe we can continue to make a difference, not just for our peoples, but for the galaxy as a whole." Althara nodded, her eyes reflecting both thought and quiet pride. "Then we shall continue, as partners, as equals, and as friends. What we have begun here will shape the future." Lyra felt a sense of profound fulfillment. She had arrived on Xylar Prime as a reluctant participant, expected to follow orders and submit to tradition. She had resisted, collaborated, and demonstrated humanity's strengths. Now she was not only respected, but also empowered to lead, innovate, and inspire. As they walked through the glowing gardens, side by side, Lyra realized that the journey had transformed her. She had faced challenges that tested her intellect, courage, and integrity. She had proven that humans could adapt, overcome, and thrive even in alien worlds. Most importantly, she had shown that respect and admiration are earned through action, not demanded through force or ceremony. The palace lights reflected in the soft waters of the gardens, casting shimmering patterns across the paths. Lyra and Althara paused at the edge of a pool, watching the reflections. The bond between human and princess was now undeniable, a partnership built on trust, intelligence, and mutual respect. In that moment, Lyra understood something profound. Humans were not merely inhabitants of Earth. They were capable of shaping worlds, inspiring allies, and achieving extraordinary feats when guided by courage, creativity, and integrity. The Xylar Dominion had underestimated humanity, but now, through action and example, Lyra had changed perceptions forever. As the stars glimmered above Xylar Prime, Lyra Solis felt a deep sense of purpose. Her path was no longer defined by obligation, but by choice, courage, and the desire to make a difference. The future was uncertain, full of challenges and opportunities, yet she was ready. Humanity had proven itself, and she had proven that humans could thrive, inspire, and lead in the vastness of the galaxy. Lyra had resisted the expectations placed upon her, yet in doing so, she had opened doors, forged alliances, and earned respect. The journey was far from over, but one truth remained clear. When humans act with courage, ingenuity, and integrity, even the most rigid traditions can be met with understanding and admiration. Princess Althara turned to Lyra once more, her expression soft but resolute. Your presence has changed my world. What we have begun together will endure. Humanity has a place here not as subordinates but as equals. That is thanks to you. Lyra smiled, feeling the weight of her achievements and the promise of the future. Then let us continue, she said, together as equals with courage, integrity, and ingenuity guiding our path. The two stood side by side, gazing at the glowing gardens and the vast city beyond, ready to face the future as partners, collaborators, and friends. Humanity had arrived on Xylar Prime not as a pawn or obligation, but as a force of ingenuity, courage, and strength, a reminder that the human spirit could thrive even in the most extraordinary circumstances. Lyra Solis had not only resisted expectations, she had reshaped them. And in doing so, she had created a future where humans and Xylar could work together, inspire one another, and achieve greatness beyond imagination.